Comparison is the thief of joy. This ancient cliche is so true, but what is often not talked about is that comparison is also the thief of confidence. It's almost unavoidable to have self-doubt in life. As we engage in new territories, new jobs, new projects, new locations, new journeys, it's natural to look to others to set our bars and ask, can I actually do this? This is okay, but when we start to compare our journey to someone else's journey, we open the door of self-doubt and restrict our own abilities to succeed. I'm all for a good challenge and healthy competition, but at the end of the day, each journey is our own. Success will be different for everyone. This clarity on what success means to each of us has the ability to reignite our confidence on the good days and the bad days. Last week, I kicked off a 3-part series on navigating imposter syndrome by looking at early childhood school wounds. This week, for part 2, I've handed the keys to Dr. Dawn Baker, who is about to give us a mini masterclass on how to regain confidence and shake off imposter syndrome. As the guest host, Dawn has delved into 4 categories that builds the foundation of confidence: self-knowledge, mental fitness, embracing challenges, and changing mindsets. Dawn is a physician, speaker, podcaster, and lifestyle design coach, and she's the founder of Practice Balance. She helps physicians and other professionals step off the treadmill of achievement, rediscover their true selves, and cultivate a practice of balance that's right for them. I'm a huge fan of Dawn's work, and I'm excited to have her be the first ever guest host on this platform. I believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. Dawn and I do similar work, but instead of comparing and competing as our culture wants us to, we can collaborate. Burnout runs rampant in our society, and we need all the voices, mentors, coaches, and countercultural platforms to help reignite the lights of our burned out humanity. By the end of this podcast, my hope is that you are screaming, "Yes, I can." We'll be right back. You are listening to the Work Life Eubiosis podcast with your host, Charleston Edwards. If this is your first time here, welcome. My goal is simple: to eradicate burnout and to bring harmony, purpose, and balance to this world, starting with the family. My hope is that this show and the story shared will provide encouragement and ideas that will be valuable to you on your journey to work-life freedom. So let's dive in to today's episode.
Hi, everybody. Thanks to Charleston for inviting me to do this guest episode on his podcast. I'm Dawn Baker, and today I'm going to be talking about how to shed imposter syndrome and ignite true inner confidence. So, what we will talk about today is why imposter syndrome and a lack of confidence contribute to burnout, especially for high-performing professionals, which I know a lot of you are. We'll also talk about what it really means to be confident and dispel some myths on confidence, and I will introduce an elemental framework with simple practices for how you can develop your own confidence. So I recently gave a version of what I'm presenting to you today as a talk at a large conference. And I used myself as the perfect example in the beginning of my talk for imposter syndrome and how it presents. I had admired the conference organizer for a number of years, but hadn't ever been able to attend. And when I found out that I was asked to be a speaker, all these thoughts went through my head. Well, I'm just a part-time doctor, and I don't have a ton of letters after my name. Except, of course, I have 4 letters after my name. I have an MD and I have a Master's of Science in Chemical Engineering, but it didn't seem like enough because I had seen these presenters with trails of alphabet soup letters behind their names due to various leadership roles. I live on a homestead with lambs and chickens, and so I'm knee-deep in lamb and chicken poop half the time, and then I don't dress up ever because when I go to work, I do anesthesiology, so I wear scrubs. So I'm not fancy. I don't go to fancy hotels like the one the conference was being held at, and I never go to spas. I had never met anyone that was attending the conference in person. So I thought to myself, well, what am I doing? I don't deserve to be here. When is the email going to come that says, we made a mistake, we don't actually want you to talk? Can anyone relate to these thoughts that were swirling around in my head? Why do we do this to ourselves? Well, our brains are wired to recognize scarcity and lack. We have this inherent negativity bias. It's a protective mechanism that hasn't died off from the days when we needed it for survival and for fitting in and staying in the tribe. And honestly, in high-stakes professional fields like medicine, law, and finance, a negativity bias serves us. You don't want to mess up because making a mistake might cost someone their life, their freedom, or their livelihood, or all their life savings. Then there are these other cultural influences like how you were brought up. What are the definitions of success that you live by? Where did you go to school? Where did you train for your profession? We naturally want to help and please others, but if we get into a position where a supervisor or someone that we really respect disagrees with us, we often question our own intuition. And this goes back to wanting to not be rejected from the tribe. Lastly, high-octane professions self-select for people who have perfectionistic tendencies, and what that translates to is feeling like you're always coming up short due to having unrealistically high expectations. So let's talk about imposter syndrome. What is it? It's often characterized by a lack of confidence despite having demonstrated competence. And it often boils down to having one of 2 thoughts. Either I'm not enough or I'm too much. So how many people listening have ever felt either one of these? An Asana workplace wellness study of 10,000 knowledge workers conducted in 2023 found a prevalence of 62% for the respondents had imposter syndrome. And this number is kind of medium to high of what you typically see in the literature. Often it runs from about 25 to 70% of people surveyed, depending on how they rank their criteria. One thing I do want to mention is that imposter syndrome affects both men and women. The data among the research is very mixed, but the I'm too much side of things is very specific to women. It's this Goldilocks phenomenon that women have a unique challenge in leadership roles where they need to balance aggressiveness and authoritativeness with a softness and femininity in their leadership style. When people experience imposter syndrome, they typically take one of 2 paths. They either overcompensate by overworking, or they self-sabotage by procrastinating and doing other self-destructive or unhealthy behaviors. There was a study out of Stanford University by the Shanafelt Group, who is very well known for their research in physician wellness and burnout prevention. They conducted a survey of 3,000 physicians. So this is a group of high-achieving professionals, very representative of a group that would have imposter syndrome. And they found that 1 in 4 people surveyed had imposter phenomenon experiences. They were compared to professions outside of medicine and found that the physicians experienced the feelings more often. They also found it more often in women and early career physicians. There have been multiple studies of medical students, and again, often studies are done on physicians because these are the kind of groups that are conducting these types of studies. And although the studies are very small, they correlate imposter syndrome with both burnout and suicidal ideation. And so imposter syndrome is really a problem because of these manifestations. But here's the deal. Imposter syndrome is not actually a mental disorder. It is not a disease. The term was coined in the 1970s by a group of female psychologists specifically studying people like them, high-achieving women. And unfortunately, they decided to change the nomenclature to imposter syndrome. It used to be called imposter phenomenon. And I don't, for one, like this term because to me, syndrome implies a pathology. And if you look at literature nowadays, they're starting to bring back this term, imposter phenomenon. And I'm all for going back to the original terminology. Because honestly, what if we just call it a normal aspect of human experience that we can learn to manage and prevent negative consequences of? There's this phrase in the personal development space, new level, new devil. And it means that as we become competent, we learn a new field of study or we gain different skills, there are always going to be new challenges waiting for us. And those challenges tend to do a number on our confidence. It's very normal. There's this study called the Dunning-Kruger study, and you may have heard of this because it's often mentioned in the sense that people tend to overestimate their abilities if they don't have a great deal of skill or knowledge in a particular area. But the interesting thing is, as you move along in the competence curve, it forms a shape of a U. So your confidence is kind of high when you don't really know what's going on. And then on the other side of the U is when whatever you're doing is completely second nature, like riding a bike. Like you do something at work that you could just do in your sleep because you have done it so many times. But that messy middle is where we're moving along constantly. And if we're moving, we're already demonstrating a real big part of the definition of confidence, which is that we're taking action. And it's very normal as you move along for that you to bottom out because as you learn more things, you start to realize that there's so much to know and it feels a little overwhelming. And that's where the confidence drops. And then it picks back up again as you move toward unconscious competence. So what would be great then is to have a base level of confidence that transcends competence, kind of a solid foundation underneath which you experience these Dunning-Kruger type curves that I just described. Imposter syndrome is very situation specific, and that is good news. So when we challenge our competence and bring it to new heights in whatever levels we want, we start to realize that imposter feelings are simply par for the course. So before we talk about how to build that foundation of low-level, inner, authentic confidence, let's go deeper on the idea of confidence and what it is. Many people get the concept of confidence wrong because they associate it with someone who is born with it, someone who has an innate ability to take bold, audacious action. They think of a cowboy or a maverick. And they also tend to associate it with traditional metrics of success, like money, power, status, notoriety, titles. But having true inner confidence will actually help you if you're leveling up in your career or if you're pulling back, doing less, or if you're completely pivoting to something new. So what is true inner confidence? Well, it transcends competence. So it stays with you no matter what you're doing in your life. You could be navigating a difficult relationship or mastering a new skill set. And as I mentioned, it doesn't rely on a traditional picture of achievement pinnacles. The great news is that this kind of confidence is built within you, and anyone can learn how to cultivate it. It's really about taking action and doing so in alignment with your personal values. So I've developed a 4-element framework for practicing inner confidence. And the 4 elements are self-knowledge, mental fitness, embracing challenges of all types, and changing your mindset from an outcome-based to a journey-based mindset. So let's touch on each one of these elements in detail. First of all is self-knowledge, and this is the big one. It's really the foundation of the foundation, because self-knowledge will not only improve your confidence, but will also help you in many other ways of your life. It will help you to have better relationships. It will help you to have clarity in your decision-making, and it will improve your resilience because you'll be able to know what stress management modalities best work for you. There's a lot of ways to go about gaining self-knowledge, but as a first step, I recommend spending more time by yourself. If this is not a regular part of your practice already, where you spend a little bit of time, even a few minutes alone in stillness and reflection every day, I highly recommend that you start there. The next thing you can do is figure out your core values. There are lots of lists of core values online. I have one on my website, practicebalance.com, that comes with an exercise you can download. You can also just Google list of core values and get one there. Figure out 10 of the values that really speak to you, and then over a period of a week, narrow it down to maybe 3 to 5 values that really demonstrate how you show up in life. You can also do what I call an energy audit. We all have an energy bank account, and if you figure out what things you're doing every day, what interactions you have, what roles you're playing, constitute deposits to your bank account and which ones constitute withdrawals, it can be very helpful to learn a little bit more about you and how your energy flows each day. Speaking of flow, you can also figure out, while you're looking at all the tasks you do, what things you tend to do to find flow. Flow is a state where you feel fully engaged in an activity and you tend to lose track of time and self. And these are very special times because they're made of pure joy for the activity. Being able to turn to flow-inducing activities when you need a confidence boost is a really wonderful tool in your toolbox. Lastly, recovery is part of self-knowledge. And what that means is, how do you individually do self-care? Do you know your love language, and can you use it on yourself? What are the best ways that you know of for you to decrease your stress? And also, do you treat yourself with self-compassion? We're often very good at treating our loved ones and those that we respect at work with compassion, but we don't often talk to ourselves in the same way that we would talk to those people. The second element is mental fitness. And mental fitness is made up, just like physical fitness, of agility, flexibility, and strength. So mental agility is the acceptance of all of your emotions. No toxic positivity allowed. You can accept both positive and negative emotions. And if you're mentally agile, you treat your emotions as data. They don't define you or say anything about you as a person. I once heard a very well-known coach say that the definition of confidence is the willingness to feel any emotion, full stop. Mental flexibility is understanding that our thoughts are not necessarily truths. We can analyze a thought and say, is this thought true? Where is this thought coming from? Is this thought serving me? Is there evidence to prove that it isn't true? Do I know people doing this thing that I'm saying to myself that I can't do? When you can analyze thoughts this way, you become an observer of your own thoughts. And this is a very powerful position to be in because you have the power to change your thoughts. And if that's not a confidence booster, I've never heard of one. Lastly, mental strength is building the muscle of your mind through mindfulness exercise. Creating a space between stimulus and response is important so that when you're triggered to feel like an imposter, you can choose the higher path. You can sit there for a minute and say, this is happening. Why am I feeling this way? The thing is, with all these practices, the key is consistency. You don't have to do everything to the nth degree. You do not have to sit on a perfect special meditation cushion for 30 minutes in a thoughtless haze. But a little bit each day, even just like 5 minutes, builds up over time. I have a lot of easy, approachable mindfulness exercises on my website, practicebalance.com. If you go there and search the word mindfulness, you'll come up with a couple of articles describing them. So the third element is embracing challenge. We've all done hard things, or we wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't be highly accomplished professionals. But at the same time, we live in a world of comfort. And besides challenges that are associated with achievement, getting a new job, getting a degree, getting a certification, getting a raise, or making partner, many of us don't value doing hard things for the sheer enjoyment of the challenge anymore. So if you want to cultivate confidence, becoming a beginner again in something low stakes is a really good way to do it. What have you wanted to learn? Maybe it's tango dancing or pickleball. Maybe it's learning to pray or meditate again. Look to your values to find a challenge that's right for you and try it for 30 days. I like to recommend 30-day challenges to people because they're long enough to instill a new habit and to embrace the identity of something that does that thing on a daily basis. But if it's really something that doesn't jive with your lifestyle or you don't like it as much as you thought, you can get through it in 30 days and then drop it. And there's really not a lot of negative consequence there. The last element is the journey mindset. The thing to remember here is that we are all on multiple journeys. As high achievers, we shouldn't be surprised that this is how life works, because I'm sure you've experienced that you're never the perfect expert in your field. You're never actually done learning your profession. That's why they have things like continuing medical education and continuing legal education. And I do yoga instruction, and even for people that are yoga teachers, you have to do continuing education because no one is ever a complete master. And confidence is no different. It is a lifelong process. So remembering that the destination is actually the journey helps you to reframe what success means to you. Then you can break those successes down into small chunks and celebrate each win along the way, no matter how small it might seem. The last thing I want to mention is that when you cultivate your own authentic inner confidence, it will benefit all the people around you. You're going to be able to navigate relationships and place healthy boundaries, and also have a neutral approach to whatever conflicts arise. You're going to be able to take bold action on changes you want to make to your work-life balance. You will also embrace challenge by learning new things, and in the process of that, demonstrate to people who look up to you, like your family members, or maybe people that you supervise at work, what it truly means to have a growth mindset. And people will recognize you as a leader no matter how many letters come after your name. I hope you enjoyed this solo cast all about authentic inner confidence. I want to mention that I offer a course on this if you want to go deeper that gives you a lot of resources and daily exercises in the 4 elements of confidence so you can embark on your own journey. I'm offering a special discount to listeners of Charleston's podcast. If you type in the coupon code Eubiosis, just part of the name of Charleston's podcast, then you can get the course at a deep discount. We'll link the course and how to access it in the show notes of this episode. Thanks so much for listening today.
Thank you once again, Dawn, for bringing your expertise to this platform. I highly recommend for listeners to also follow Dawn's podcast called Practice Balance, and also check out her resources at practicebalance.com. As she mentioned, she is offering a special discount for listeners on her confidence course. Visit practicebalance.com and use the code EUBIOSIS during the checkout to apply the discount. EUBIOSIS, EUBIOSIS, during the checkout to apply the discount. We'll be back next week with the finale of this mini-series on imposter syndrome. Have a good week. Thank you for listening to the Work-Life Eubiosis podcast, part of the work-life resources created by Own Your 5 to 9. I hope that you have found encouragement and a few ideas to strengthen your journey to purpose, freedom, and balance. Have you overcome burnout and found a new way of life? Millions around the globe are still at the risk of burnout and losing it all. And your story may be the one that sparks not only a dream, but action. Visit ownyour5to9.com for more information and submit your story. While you're there, join the Work-Life Eubiosis newsletter and receive additional resources weekly right to your inbox. If you enjoy this podcast, take time to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Share it with a friend or loved one. Remember, the most important organization in the world is the family. Let's do our part to strengthen it. Thank you for listening.